here. So I climbed this mountain just to shoot this video today. I'm doing this video from the top of a mountain because I like to practice what I preach when it comes to preparedness, survival, training. It's important that you get out there, you put yourself in challenging, difficult situations. You don't just wait and think that you're going to rise to the occasion when things get bad, you know. So it's important to train in whatever way you can. One of the reasons why I'm doing this video on a mountaintop is because climbing a mountain is quite analogous to a long-term survival situation for a variety of reasons. One of the first reasons is when you're doing any long distance hiking, you have to ration your supplies. Supplies are going to be scarce. If the supply chain breaks down and you don't know when it's going to start up again, you don't know if the price of commodities is going to go through the roof, you're not going to know when help is coming, you're not going to know when the grid is going to be turned on again. Thus, you're tasked with rationing whatever supplies you have, be it a month, 6 months, or a year. Practicing calorie reduction when times are good is going to condition you to be able to deal with the rationing that's going to have to take place in a preparedness situation. Because if you approach your supplies like it's any other day, then you're going to quickly deplete your supplies. The desire to overindulge is going to be there because it's going to be a stressful situation. It's going to be a depressing situation. And anytime people are pushed emotionally, there's a greater desire to indulge for that dopamine release that we get, and indulge in whatever way, shape comes to mind, okay? And for a lot of people, it's going to be eating food, consuming their consumables, whatever those may be. So practicing good discipline when it comes to foregoing the desire to indulge in food and staying well within your caloric range is going to be very important. Now, this is extra challenging for us Westerners because we live in a cornucopic society where food is in great abundance. We live in a very wasteful, gluttonous society where we can throw things out, we can overeat, we can easily exceed our caloric needs for the day without spending too much money. Granted, it's probably not going to be healthy food. This is why going on a caloric deficit diet from time to time can train you and get you accustomed to foregoing those desires to consume food. Because indeed, you're probably going to end up losing weight, and all of us can stand to lose a few pounds, right? So you have to prepare for the fact that you're going to be at a calorie deficit after the shit hits the fan, even if you have a lot of food. Now, if you do have a great abundance of food and you know the situation is not a global one, then obviously indulge, okay? But if there is a longer term scenario, like if this whole COVID thing keeps unraveling, and if the whole China-US relations don't improve, if the tensions in the Middle East due to the price of oil, all of these things are potentially factoring into a big powder keg of activity down the road. And then of course we have the potential economic downturn, this bear market bounce, bull market bounce, whatever you want to call it. We have the price of gold skyrocketing, we have silver skyrocketing. All of these things indicate that economic hardship may well be on the horizon. And then of course, if we get another intense second wave and we go into a lockdown once again, or even if we don't, then chances are things are going to get pretty serious. So for those reasons, it's important that even if you do have an ample supply of food, that you try to space it out. Now, this is extra important because in a survival situation, you're probably going to have to do more work for most of them, whether it's bugging out, whether it's gardening, doing all the things that electricity and technology would have allowed you to do with ease before. Now you're going to have to do those things manually. So that's going to require more energy. Just a day of hiking cross country can easily burn 2,000 to 3,000 calories in addition to your basal metabolic rate, which is 2,000 calories. So what I'm talking about is not only ado with a long-term shelter in place, but also a survival in the woods scenario. You're probably going to be burning a lot of calories, whether it's just to keep warm, if you're sweating a lot, to keep your body cool. All of these things are going to require energy. For those reasons, it's important that you ration your supplies. The next thing climbing mountains has taught me about survival and preparedness is patience and pacing yourself, because there's going to be so many situations in a survival situation where patience is going to be crucial. One of those situations is going to be hunting. When you're hunting, patience is of utmost importance, because you don't know how long you're going to have to sit in that tree stand or in that blind, and you don't know how long you're going to have to track or stalk an animal, and you may invest thousands of calories into that process before getting a return on that investment of time and calories that you use in order to procure the game. It may require you to travel over long distances. It will require, like I said, blind discipline, sound discipline, visual discipline, movement discipline. You'll have to be still for extended periods of time, even if the bugs are biting you, even if you're very cold and you're trying to keep warm. So these are all challenges to procuring game in the field. Now, obviously, the more knowledge you have, you can offset that calorie expenditure. If you know where the animals are and you know the landscape and you know what you're doing, then you can drastically minimize the amount of calories you have to expend to get calories from the field. But for most people, who don't hunt a lot, myself included, unless you have a dedicated spot that you hunt with, unless you're using baits or something like that, it's going to take you a while to get the game. So you might invest 20,000 calories into getting a 100,000 calorie animal, and that investment might stretch across a week. It's a necessary thing that you have to do. Now, the other thing is going to be fishing. Okay, so fishing is one of those things. If you know the lake, if you know a lot about the species in the lake, and if you've fished it lots before, it can be really easy. It can take, an hour to pull out enough fish to last a day or two. And fish provide good fats. They provide proteins, and they're gonna, for the most part, with the exception of the lack of carbohydrates, they're gonna give you everything you need in order to survive, if you can supplement it with some other grain or something like that. But fishing too, may require patience, and it may require the discipline to know when and where to do it. So you may have to go out at dawn and dusk, because that's the best time. That's when the fish tend to bite, especially spots which are accessible by land, because that's when it's coolest. Patience is also going to come in handy if you have to do any sort of reconnaissance, if you have to do any scouting of another group, whatever the case might be. Even if you're just squatting in place, sheltering in place for long periods of time, and you're trying not to attract attention to your position, it's going to require a lot of light discipline, noise discipline, and it's easy to start to get a little careless when nothing is happening. I'm going to give you another tip if you are hiking. Myself personally, when I hike up a mountain, I try to do it continuously. I try to take no breaks. And I know it seems like I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I suppose this kind of ties into not only resilience, but having endurance, having stamina, okay? And one of the main things you want to focus on is breathing deeply, taking big, deep breaths, because everything is about oxygen. When I'm climbing up a mountain, I don't take breaks, for the primary reason that once you take one break, the tendency is to keep taking breaks every 5 minutes. So I don't take pit stops. What I do is I adjust my pace accordingly so that I don't have to do that. And I focus on my breathing. And if you use that technique where you're just really trying to get as much oxygen as possible, because for most people it's not a muscular issue, unless you're really carrying a lot of weight, which might be the case, and even then your muscles need oxygen in order to function. So oxygen is everything. So making sure that you're breathing properly, okay? And breathing, the reason why I bring it up in the context of patience is breathing is a meditative thing, okay? And whether you're hiking, whether you're trying to be patient, focusing on your breath, whether you're trying to control anxiety or emotion in a situation, just focus on your breathing. If you can just focus on one tangible thing, that can make all the other schizophrenic stuff that's going on start to dissipate. If you can just focus on your breathing, that's one of the main things you can do if you're trying to control anxiety, trying to control stress, or you're under a lot of physical strain in the moment. Deep breathing. Another quick tip here, if you want to have one of the best lifting sets of your life, if you go to the gym, if you lift weights, make sure you exhale all of the oxygen out of your lungs, blow it all out till you totally deplete your lungs, till your lungs are collapsed almost, and then take a big deep breath of fresh oxygen, because your lungs contain a lot of stale oxygen in the various deep chambers of your lungs. So to get all of that out, take some huge deep breaths before you do your lift, and I guarantee you it will be a much better set than you've ever had before. Now, another thing I want to talk about is resilience and having a will to live. And this is something you can't teach people. Either you have it or you don't. Some people, it seems, are followers, for lack of a better word. And it's almost as if they don't care whether or not they live as much as the next person. Like, I'm sure, will to live is a variable thing. Not everybody has the same will to live. Yes, we all have a will to avoid pain and seek pleasure to varying degrees, but for some people, that urge is stronger than others. And for some people, it comes at the expense of others, meaning that it involves being selfish. And so I'm not saying be selfish, but I'm saying be selfish enough that you're going to want to self-preserve. Self-preservation is everything. That's why, in most survival situations, for example, if you're on an airplane and you got to put on the oxygen mask, you got to put it on yourself first before you put it on your child so that you don't pass out. So you have to preserve yourself first so that you can help others. You don't want to do the foolish thing of putting it on your child first and then you pass out and then they have nobody to help them, or maybe you don't even make it that far. I don't know what to say about how to train that. Either you have it or you don't, and it's usually reflected in a person's ambition that they have in life. It's reflected in a person's desire to self-improve. So if you have all those things, if you have a desire to self-improve, the will to live and the sheer tenacity of that can, in some cases, override even a lack of knowledge, a lack of supplies, a lack of capabilities. Just simply having a sheer will, fighting will to live is something that not every single person has. So that's just another critical psychological component of being a survivalist. One of the other things is going to be emotional control. Having the ability to not make hasty, emotional, irrational decisions just because you need a quick release. It's very important that you don't make any critical decisions when you're upset or when you're emotional. You want to divorce your decision making from your reacting to the situation. Most of us, we know when we're doing something because we just want to release. Maybe you just want to swear, you feel like you want to hit something, you just want to release that energy, which is building, that emotional energy. You never want to direct that into a decision in a survival situation, because that, of course, can have drastic consequences, especially when you're talking about a life and death scenario. That's when the petty human arguments, the petty human disputes really need to be understood for what they are. And they are essentially trivial, meaningless. And it's trifling, especially when your main priority is to survive, to be fighting over trifling things and human politics and things of that nature. So in those situations, it's important to be able to discern, okay, what is pride, what is ego. Another important trait is going to be temperance, and your ability to avoid indulging in mind-altering substances, because you're going to need your mind to be 100% as pure as possible in order to make the most effective decisions. Now, there are some mind-altering substances which might help alleviate anxiety, to some extent. And if you are already chemically dependent on something, there's an argument that can be made for you to either taper that dependence or not stop it cold turkey when shit is hitting the fan, because that could even be worse, not only for physical withdrawals, but psychological withdrawals. And that will be reflected in your unstable mood and temperance. So this is why I always encourage people, if you have an addiction problem, quit it now. Quit it while you can. Because the last thing you want to do is have that stress on top of all the other stress you're going to be dealing with. But if you are addicted to something and the shit hits the fan, ration what you got, if you got anything, because you're going to need it to either taper off or get you through those times. Because when you start getting used to functioning with a substance in the background, that's your body's homeostasis. So if you take that away, you're going to be actually less capable of functioning. Okay, this is why a lot of alcoholics, you take away their alcohol and they can't think as well, at least for the first few weeks when they're in withdrawal. So they almost need to have that for a short period of time in order to manage the withdrawals, because the withdrawal makes you less efficient in almost every way. Lastly, I think the importance of taking calculated risks, knowing when to take risks, and knowing the difference between a calculated risk and just a risk. It's one thing to consider all the variables, do a cost-benefit analysis, and then make a risky decision. It's another thing to just quickly do something because you feel emotionally compelled to do it. So, there's going to be times when you need to take calculated risks. The stock market is a great example, okay? If you do a research on a company, if you are confident in what they're selling, and if you're confident that the market is going to take to it, and all of the fundamentals, and you studied it all, you've researched it all, and then you decide to make an investment on the basis of that, chances are it's going to end up okay for you. Chances are you're going to get ahead as a result of that decision. But if you just go into something for fear of missing out, or you just something looks good but you haven't really considered all the fundamentals, or you're getting caught up in the momentum of the market, that's when bad decisions get made. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is take risks, but make sure they are calculated and intelligent risks, and also consider what would happen if it went wrong, and are you able to deal with it if it goes wrong? Are you able to take the blow? Are you able to take a loss? And if you can take a loss and it's not going to set you back too far, then maybe it's a risk worth taking. I would say if the reward is not worth the risk, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. Anyways, let me know what sort of psychological strengths and weaknesses you guys feel are relevant to preparedness and survival in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, Canadian Prepper out.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, your one-stop shop for premium, high-quality, brand-name products that have been tried and tested by myself and other YouTube gear reviewers. My subscribers save 10% off by using the coupon code SURVIVALPREPPER. All one word in all caps.